you're very welcome to the RTÉ Soccer Podcast. I am Raf Diallo. Later on, I'm going to be joined by Rachel Graham of Shelbourne to talk about matters in the Women's Premier Division, also the weekend's All-Ireland Cup as well. But right now, I'm joined by Richie, Towell and Barry Murphy. You're both very welcome. And we weren't actually planning to talk about this, but it was just because I was fixated on the Arsenal-West Ham game yesterday. And it's not even so much the VAR controversy towards the end. It's the save that David Raya makes of Mateus Fernandes. And given you're a goal-scoring midfielder, you know your way around, Richie, in terms of what you're supposed to do in the box. And you've obviously been in goal before. You've had to make crucial saves before. Wanted to sort of talk about that scenario. So maybe just first in terms of what Mateus Fernandes should have done when he came through, and not even just when it comes to the shot, because there's a few seconds before that maybe where there's some decision-making that needs to be done.
It's a brilliant run from him, first and foremost. He makes a great run into the box. His first touch is perfect. It sets him up. He's got to either do a little toe poke finish or else inside of the right foot. If you see it back, Raf, he takes probably 4 or 5 extra steps that he doesn't need to. So in them 4 or 5 extra steps, he takes an extra touch as well. And it just closes the gap between him and David Raya. And David Raya, he's a top keeper. There's a reason why he's going to get golden glove this year. He makes big saves at big times, and there was no bigger than that.
Yeah, and Barry, from the goalkeeper's perspective, what did David Raya do well beyond just the actual bit at the very end of it?
Yeah, he got out well to close it, but as Richie said, he should have never had the opportunity to close it. He was quite deep where he was on his line coming out, and by the time he makes it to 8 or 9 yards out, Ray closed it, and he actually, the way he spreads himself is the right foot goes out that way to make a save with his left foot. I think that's where he thinks he's going to go, and he tries to reverse it in at the near post, which is a strange finish from there, and it's just a brilliant save. He spreads himself so well because he kind of has to cover the gap underneath him as well. So the technique they have now, that they're like gymnasts, really, they can spread the legs both ways, and I think he thinks he's going to go to the left, but it's a brilliant save with his right foot.
Yeah, and is it the thing, actually, the longer a scenario goes on, the goalkeeper gets to dictate it that little bit more?
Yeah, it's nearly a game of chess. I think if the centre forward or whoever it is comes bearing down on goal, the ball's in their court to where they're finishing, the goalkeeper has to react. But then as soon as you're right on top of the keeper, it's so hard to get around them then. They're so big, they can, as you said, dictate where they go.
Yeah, and let's say in a scenario where Richie, who is obviously not holding I'm presuming Richie scores, I presume, yeah.
Well, yeah, 50-50.
See, for me, I never wanted the keeper to get set perfectly. So
that's exactly it.
That's why if I was going in a little toe poke finish, that would have really caught him off guard, because he would have been expecting an extra step or an extra touch, where just to get in, toe poke finish. Me and Barry spoke about it. There's been loads of players down the years that, and it looks a bit unorthodox for a toe poke finish. Oh, it's a toe poke finish, but they're the ones that are perfect because the keeper's waiting to get set, and if you can get that shot off before he's set, the keeper has no chance.
You're actually better off being set in the wrong position as the goalkeeper and set than trying to close it down.
Yeah. Anyway, the important thing, Keith Tracy's very happy with that result. That's all that matters. And he was here last Wednesday, when we reacted to the squad that Hamer Hallgrimsson named for the camp in Murcia. So there have been a couple of updates over the weekend. So Rory Finneran, Ireland under-17 World Cup captain, and he has on the books at Newcastle, would have come through at Blackburn. He's in the squad now, and Joel Bagan, who was a doubt, is withdrawn. Casey McAteer as well, who has had a number of caps himself, also withdrawn, both due to injury. And just Richie, just on the Rory Finneran call up, because the midfield area, what was interesting about the original squad that was named was all the players that had been brought in had been capped at that stage already, so there was nobody new coming through, unlike in other areas of the squad. I suppose it's a bit of a concern, that there isn't as much depth in that area.
Yeah, I actually watched a lot of Rory Finneran in the World Cup for the 17s. I thought he was excellent at it. There's a reason why Newcastle have gone and got him at such a young age. I know there was a bit of a tribunal about that as well for compensation, because obviously Blackburn, I think he was their youngest ever.
Yeah, 15 or thereabouts.
Yeah, extremely young. So it shows how much they thought of him. So to make your debut when you're 15 or 16 is incredible, and for Newcastle to go and get him is a big coup for them. For him to be added to the squad, I think it's a great addition. You obviously have the likes of Moran and Conor Coventry that is going to be in that position as well. Lads who probably haven't hit the heights that they thought they would have when you see their progression from 17s to 19s to 21s. It hasn't really materialised for them. So I like the look of the squad. It's a real youthful, exuberance look of a squad. So it's going to be interesting to see how, especially them midfield roles, because obviously, look, you're looking at Jason Malumbi and Jason Knight, and they're like the senior pros now, and they're still quite young, they are. So it's going to be very interesting to see how not just the younger lads, but how the older lads handle that responsibility as well.
And Finneran, in terms of style, he's a bit of a 6. Is that more or less what position he plays?
Yeah, he looks like he can do a bit of everything, doesn't he? That's what when I watched him playing for Ireland, I loved his maturity. Like that, sometimes when someone's playing in that position at a young age, you can see them getting caught out of position, and like as I said, a bit of youth, a bit of exuberance that they want to just go and follow the game, but he seems to have that real know-how around the pitch of where to be at the right time, and there's a reason why big clubs have gone in from.
Yeah, I did ask Hamer about the squad depth in that particular area in midfield, and his response was, we have Andy Moore and Jason Malumbi, Jason Knight, Connor Coventry, all of whom have been with us before, meaning that we will be struggling in that area with experience for the next camp. So that is one area where we might need some experience and have to do double caps. We will see how we progress. The ones that we have that have been in our regular squad, Finn Azaz, Will Smallbone, Alan Brown, they are the ones still playing and will be in consideration for the second camp. We will see how it goes, but we might need to call 1 or 2 players up for this squad. But the thought process is to have everyone in for the second one. Either way, Rory Finneran has a decent chance of getting capped against Grenada on Saturday. And from the goalkeepers area, of course, Josh Keeley we've spoken about, because you would have known him as he was just coming through at Pats. Killian Cahill, probably somebody we don't know too well at Leyton Orient, but would have come through here at Shamrock Rovers. Yeah,
he's had an interesting kind of run of things. Like, he signed straight from the Brighton 21s as well for Leyton Orient, and they've done well in terms of goalkeepers at Leyton Orient. Josh was obviously there as well, and he hadn't played any sort of men's football and got the number 1 spot in October. They signed Bachmann then. He was at Watford, the Austrian international as well, so he lost his place there, but it's a good chance for him to get in. Like, I think that we've real strength and depth obviously in the goalkeeping situation with Kelleher, Bazunu, Josh Keeley's in there, Max O'Leary as well. We've got some great depth, but I think he's got a great chance to go and prove himself in this camp. And then there's Aaron Maguire as well, the Spurs under 21s who'd be floating around as well, so really good depth.
I feel sorry for any goalkeeper coming through at a young age, because I don't think Quavian, even if he's not playing, you have Gavin Bazunu there too, and they're so young, they're still so young, they are, Raf. So I feel really sorry for any keeper that's coming through, because realistically I don't think there's probably like what any other keeper coming through when Shay Given was there, nobody was going to take him off that pedestal already, because he was so good. I see the same with the likes of Quavian and Gavin as well. It's unfortunate for the younger ones now. Yeah, now something we discussed last week, of course, no League of Ireland players in the squad, but that was signposted already by Hamer Halgrimsson, so that's not a major surprise. There has been, and he's been talking about maybe trying to do a January camp at some stage, which would bring in those players, but of course the timing would be difficult, given also that's pre-season for League of Ireland clubs. There have been sort of similar attempts, but it was the Ireland under 23s, and you yourself were in those squads in 2007, 2008. Pat Fenlon, I think, was manager at the time. Were they basically, in a way, almost like the equivalent of sort of like a League of Ireland international camp in a sense?
Yeah, in a sense, it was trying to bridge the gap between 21s. A lot of us have played together at 21s as well. Between that and the first team, like, there's just such a disposition and probably different in standards as well. And it's the first taste of international football. Like, it's a different environment, different pressures. And I loved it. Like, it was the best players in the country at the time, and you're just hoping somebody comes out of that camp and stands up. And for us, it was Seamus Coleman. Like, I think he went to Everton. Then the next season, he was excellent in those games, brilliant in the league, and it's just a shop window, and that's what we need. Like, you look at the players in the league at the moment, and the managers are pushing them forward for places in these Ireland squads. You need a window to go and show that, and obviously this window, the first window, there's nobody been added to it, and that was probably designed that way. But the next window, I think there's a great chance for things. The only thing about it is you're coming into the European games kind of in July, so that window, you're thinking there's a lot of games. There's Friday, Monday games, Bows, Rovers, Pats, the players you think you might get a leg up into that Ireland team. There's a lot of games in that period of time, so it'll be interesting to see if the managers do eventually release them. Yeah, now speaking of the League of Ireland, just turning to the results on Friday, so we'll start on saying Pats and Waterford. So a 4-1 win for Pats against Waterford, who have a new manager in charge in Graham Coughlin, and there was no manager bounce in terms of the result, Richie, but overall, did you feel there was at least some improvement in performance, at least in the first half?
Yeah, first half a little bit, but I think you'd probably put that more so down to how St. Pat's came out and started the game. And it's a real trend of theirs, isn't there? The last while, they seem to concede really early goals, and at the moment they're getting away with it. But I think as they go up the levels, if you give Shamrock Rovers an early lead, they're going to absolutely destroy it. So I think Stephen Kenny, he won't be overly concerned because he's seen how the lads have responded, but he'll most definitely want to shore that up, because Padraig Amott had a chance even before that again, so it would have been even before 5 minutes that they would have scored. Conceding from a set play as well is not really great for Pats from their point of view. For Graham Coughlin, 4 goals conceded again, Raf. They've conceded the most goals in the league by a country mile. Really concerning, and I think you see by some of the comments that he made after the game.
Yeah,
there's a lot of lads that he feels probably aren't up to scratch there, and you can see it in the performances, which is really disappointing, because I think all he wanted is the basics of football: people to run, work hard, press from the front, and give it everything. And when the manager comes out with comments to say that he doesn't feel like that he's probably getting that, it's really concerning.
Yeah, because he was speaking to John Kenny, our own John Kenny, after the game, and he brought up fitness more than once in his comments in terms of where the performance levels are at. So this is what Graham Coughlin had to say. I'd love to be able to bring in 1 or 2 other players to help us as well. There's no doubt 1 or 2 in the changing room will have to get off the bus. They've gone as far as they can with us, and that's just natural. There's no great secrets there. That's natural, and that's what happens in football. So yeah, a huge mountain to climb, which is a bit of an indictment on where things are at right now.
Yeah, it really is. You look like you've been there a year already after that interview, didn't you? Like, and he's taken the job with his eyes wide open. But I think, like, the reality showed then on Friday night as well just how far they are off the pace. And like, I think you can't legislate for the 2 goals they conceded. First, Glenfield, I don't know what he's doing, dragging him back, and he, like 5 minutes beforehand, gives away a free kick.
He's
on the
lucky
edge
not
of the
to get
box.
sent off as
Yeah,
well.
and the manager even said it after the game.
Yeah.
Listen, he's lucky not to be sent off. And then you look at Houston, then for the second goal, tries to control it in the 6-yard box and it gets nicked off. And like, that's basic stuff. And that's what I think Graham's talking about, getting the basics right. And I think managers always point to a fitness, I think, when they come in as well, because they want them to get after teams, get after Pats, try and press and try and defend. And that's the way they're going to go. And naturally, he has to get a sort of impact out of him straight away. So he's got to come in and he's bad cop straight away. Listen, just I'm not going to stay on this bus. And I think that's trying to get a reaction. And I think there's only one way this is going at the moment. I think for Waterford, I just don't see them pulling out of it. I don't think they've enough about them to pull out of it.
I'm pretty sure I played against Graham Coughlin's Newport County team, and what I remember of them, they're big, physical, and they worked their socks off. They did. So he's obviously looking at that Waterford team gone in, and it's, you talk about principles and identities of what a manager likes in their teams, and he's looking at that and probably thinking, these are all nice little footballers, but they don't do the hard yards, and you can see it. It translates into the matches it does. They concede silly goals, like as Barry has said. They've conceded the most amount of goals this season, and every single time a team's gone forward against them, it does look like they're going to concede, which is really concerning.
Yeah, and also the body language after the Glenfield foul from the rest of the players, almost resignation, and not even, usually even if the decision is whether it's correct or not, they're
not even trying to hide it.
They'll go straight to the referee and have a go. But then obviously Richie, and as we've kind of intimated at the beginning, you scored some cracking goals in your time, and then El Bizetti with not even putting a lot of power on it. It's placement almost.
Yeah, it's lovely, and it's a hard one for the keeper as well, because there's a couple of bodies in front of it. He uses one of the defenders, I think it may be Matt, and he uses him as like a little shield and he bends it around him. It's brilliant. It's great for his confidence as well. El Bizetti, he's obviously been really, really unfortunate with injuries over the last probably 18 months or so. So for him to get 2 goals, I was really surprised that he passed it to Edmondson. No chance. You're talking about me. I would have never squared that other one, but it probably shows you the type of character he is. He's a real team player. I'm sure Stephen Kenny be delighted that he's got 2 goals. He's got an assist. Because I think if you have players like him and Cian Levy in top form, that's a recipe for where Pats want to go. And look, Pats are looking to challenge. They're unbeaten in 5. They've scored 31 goals now. I said it from the get-go when the season started, Pats are a real confidence team. It looks like the confidence is oozing out of them now. Even I was at the game against Bows, we went 1-0 down. The Waterford game went 1-0 down, and it's like, no problem, we'll get on with it. I think maybe last year, a Pats team that went down early, they would have crumbled a little bit. They would have probably felt a little bit sorry for themselves, but I think you can see the confidence the lads thinking, we can go out and score 4 or 5 goals, no problem at all.
Yeah, but I suppose the litmus test for Pats will be other games in other scenarios, because I think as Paul Carey was saying on here last week, they still have a touch of a soft underbelly, as we've seen often on the Monday night games.
Yeah, I think just for my worry for them would be the difference between their high bar and low bar. I think their low bar, they've got to get wins. They've got to still find ways to win games. Rovers go and do that. draws aren't going to cut it anymore. Rovers are on a head of steam, and I do see improvements in them. It's just about that consistency. Can they get results when they're not performing ultra well?
Yeah, and then on the other hand, Shamrock Rovers are getting results, and they're just everything is rolling in their direction. 3-1 win at Galway United. The first goal by Michael Noonan. Now Noonan has actually been kind of floating under the radar a bit because everyone's been talking about Victor Ojianvuna. And should he get an Ireland call up? And Noonan, when we saw the Ireland under-17s when they were both there, was probably ahead of him in terms of schedule. Yeah.
I think Michael's the main man. I think he's the biggest talent that's going to come out of Ireland in a long time. I love the maturity in his game. Sometimes people look and probably think he doesn't have that flair that other players have. But what I see with Michael is he's so efficient. Everything he does, he holds the ball up really well. He runs in behind really well. And if the ball's in front of goal, he's the most natural goal scorer you'll see. So for me, I see like the likes of Jaden Umeh in the Orien squad, and for me, obviously, you look at he's mega talented, and he is that flair player. But you look at what Michael's done, even in the World Cup, led the line really well. I think if there was a League of Ireland based team that was going to go, I think Michael would be most definitely top of the list. And you obviously then have the likes of Adam Brennan, who added goals to his game on Friday as well against Galway. So for me, them two, along with Victor, they're three of the best talent in the league at the moment, and just lucky that they're all playing at Shamrock Rovers.
Yeah, and John McGovern's run as well opened the space for Noonan as well for that run. But then Ojianvuna as well, he's adding a lot more to his game as well. Paul Curry again last week was talking about just how physically he's well able to stand up to the challenge of playing in midfield now, having been kind of left out wide in the early part of his career. A couple of assists as well now to his game, so he's starting to impact the game in the final third too.
Yeah, I think you can see him. He's grown week on week, and as you said, Raf, I remember when he came up, when I was at Rovers, when he came up and trained with us, and like that, he was quite slight in stature. He was. I hadn't seen him then for a while, and he actually came up to one of my summer camps that I done with the kids just to get some photographs and sign some autographs and stuff like that. And I couldn't believe when he stood beside me how much bigger, how much physically imposing he looked, and you can see that translating onto the pitch now. I think his performances are growing week on week, and I still don't think we've seen the best of Victor. I know everybody at Shamrock Rovers have said how high the bar can be for him, and I think he's only going to get better, even though his performances have been really good.
Yeah, now Shamrock Rovers dominated the game, but Ed McGinty still had to make a couple of saves. There's a deflected strike that he does really, really well with.
It's wonderful, and it's all down to his footwork again. He's planted to go to his left, but he hasn't overcommitted just in case something like that happens, and he's done that so many times this season and gets back down to his right. Phenomenal save. And you're talking about talented goalkeepers for Ireland squad. I think if you're looking at a League of Ireland based squad, I think he's got to be in it in terms of the goalkeeping position.
Yeah, and then from the Galway United point of view, Barry, as well, I suppose the way the table is shaken up as well, and Galway have dropped a couple of points from sort of last minute concessions. Maybe they would be 4 points higher than where they were without those goals being given away, and it's suddenly, when you look at it themselves in Sligo, just at the bottom part of that pack now.
Yeah, if they have an identity about them, though, that's the difference for me. Like, they know what they're about. They're going to win games, going to lose games. They're always going to be in games. That's the difference between them and Waterford. Sligo have a bit about them as well, and you see what they did at Talca Park. They know what they're about. They've got goals in the team. I think that they'll be fine.
Yeah, and then Bows back to winning ways, and had gone 9 games without a win, and now we're still third actually at the end of that, but a 3-1 win away at Dundalk. And Richie, just in terms of runners into a box, Ross Tierney, when he's at his best, we've seen him in the last couple of games. He's definitely impacting things.
Yeah, I didn't realise he only has 2 goals. That was only his second goal this season, which is crazy when you think of a player of his calibre. I think Ross Tierney, look, he's one of the best talents that you're going to see in the league. He's always looking for the ball. He's always looking to try and make things happen. But when I heard that was only his second goal, I couldn't believe it. And you see, was it last week or the week before, he didn't start the game and came on and impacted it really good. So that'll probably tell you the type of lad that he is as well. But it's ridiculous from Rob Cornwell on the flip side of that as well to give away the penalty first and foremost, because Dundalk were really good in the first half, Raf. They really put it up to Bohemians. Obviously, Bows made a couple of tweaks and changes at half time, and they were in the ascendancy in the second half. Alan Reynolds, I'm sure, had a big sigh of relief at the end of that game, because as you said, 9 games without a win. It starts to creep in, and I heard his comments after the game saying that it looked like the lads had forgot how to win because of their reactions after the game, and sometimes that does creep in. You have that little bit of a losing mentality, and that's the last thing you want to soak into a dressing room and into a team. So they'd be delighted to get over the line to have got the win, because it's a difficult place to go, Oriel Park, especially the way Kieran Kilduff has his team set up. I think a big thing at that, Daryl Horgan had to come off at half time because he was ill as well. So I think that was a big impact for them, because they were playing really well in the first half. So really unfortunate from the Dogs' point of view, because they've been doing great. And Alan Reynolds, I'm sure he's able to take a big deep breath now after getting his first win in 9.
Yeah, that substitution, I think at 48 Diallo came on. I think he made a massive difference. Came off McDonald at 48.
First time a Diallo has made a difference in a while. Anyway, yeah.
Just want to throw that in there. But 2 minutes later, to get the goal, I think he offers a little bit more. I think he kind of frees up Tierney a little bit to go forward.
Frees up the Voy as well a little bit. I always notice when the Voy is playing and Diallo's not there, the Voy is always the one that's coming wanting to link the play from back to front. And for me, you want him a little bit higher. But like you see for the third goal, his way to pass for Myers, that's what you want, where a lot of people get a rush of blood to the head when they get in that position and they don't quite make that pass. And that's why I think when Diallo's in there, it affords Bohemians to be able to play Ross Tierney Dawson Voy a little bit higher. And then he has that calm head and that quality that can open teams up.
Yeah, and then Aid Irvin had a sighter before, which Traska did well with, but obviously the one he actually does put into the back of the net. Not much a goalkeeper can do, I suppose.
That's phenomenal. That's where you drop to the knee nearly and just look at it going in the top corner. But they're ones that can go so wrong. They usually end up coming back to where the balls come from, the pass. Like, it's just a phenomenal strike.
I was surprised he hit it. I thought he was going to take a touch and then hit it. When he hit it first time, look, he, as you said, Barry, normally them shots, probably 9 out of 10 of them either go over the bar or you scuff it back where it came from, and he's hit absolutely perfect.
Ruby's been so good for them up top as well. Though. He just gets it, holds it up, and they can get runners on beyond him. Like he's just done so well for them this season.
Yeah. And from a Dundalk point of view, no worries really in terms of they've come off the boil a bit. No,
I don't have any concerns. I would class them very similar to what Barry said about Galway. They're always in games. Even to touch back on Galway, they were 2-0 down. They got back to 2-1. They had a couple of chances then to make it 2-2. 3-1 looks like a flattering scoreline, but it most definitely wasn't, because Galway were well in the game. And like that for Dundalk, they're always in the game. They are. Only that Rob Cornwall got sent off, I think they probably would have nicked something from the game as well.
The funny thing about it, Raf, they're the second top scorers in the league, and they've conceded the second amount of goals as well. Like it's
entertainment. It's great entertainment up in Oriel.
Yeah, and there's a loud derby next, which was entertaining on the pitch last time, but obviously off it was, we won't go there again. Anyway, Drogheda go into it also in reasonable form again, so a 1-0 win over Derry City. Ryan Brennan scoring the penalty, and Barry, they seem to have rediscovered their mojo just in time for this loud derby.
Yeah, they have as well. I was commentating on the game up in Rovers as well, and they looked way off it. Kev was so disappointed after it, but the reaction the other night, I think he nearly had one eye on this, and that's the way they've kind of managed the Friday Monday games into Friday again. They were excellent, and they didn't have to work overly hard for the win. That's what disappointed me about Derry on the night. We spoke about the Clark in the false 9. I think that they just took their chances when they got them drawn. They went back to what they were last season: set pieces, counter attacks, keeping the ball well, taking their chances when they came and deserved the win on the night.
Yeah, and Richie, just in terms of the penalty, and I suppose it was kind of a clumsy one from the defender, I suppose more so, but Warren Davis obviously makes him make a decision.
Yeah, I thought it was harsh. I did when I seen it. You can see from a referee's point of view why he gives it. If he hadn't have given it, I would have seen it from that point of view as well. So really unfortunate for Carl Winchester. And then obviously you have Ryan Brennan that steps up, and it's an absolutely emphatic penalty, isn't it? It's brilliant. But yeah, it's like you can see Winchester, he doesn't actually go for it, but Davis is quite clever that he kind of leans into him a little bit and goes over, and sometimes you get them and sometimes you don't, and he did on that day. Yeah,
and Derry easily could have pulled something out of the bag. It was that Henry Ryla shot as well, which we don't know if it did cross line. It didn't look like it, but it's hard to, because we don't have the angle.
No, I was disappointed there. I can see what they were trying to do with the false 9 up against like a 4-2-3-1, like trying to like overload the midfield and space, but you need runners beyond Clark once he drops in, and Duffy and I think it was Santos in the first half didn't tuck in, didn't get runners beyond it, so it was so easy to defend for Bulger and Keely as centre halves. The space was there, they didn't need to do anything, just everything was in front of them, so easy to defend, and really disappointing result considering where they've come back from Derry.
I think you can see with Derry, with especially Michael Duffy and the Santos, they're only coming back from injury. They're not up to full speed. Both of them only got 60 minutes of a game, and I always look and think that they're the team that can go and create and score goals. But when they don't have their two main creative players that are fully fit, you can see, as I said, they only got an hour, so it goes to show where they are with their training schedule and stuff like that. I think once they get them two boys back up to full speed, I think they'll be alright.
They don't know where to put Marky either, though. They're like,
I know.
Marky's
they're trying to fit everybody
as a
in.
six, isn't he? Like, yeah, he was with Withdrawal. He was so consistent in there. They just don't know where to play him.
Yeah, and then Shelbourne and Sligo. So a 0-0 draw, but the main part of this, Barry, is the home record. We were teeing it up last week with Keith and Paul in terms of, they have the worst home record in the league, Shells, and yet I think this is like 8 games at home now. Still can't buy a win there.
No, they can't. And then you look at what they did in Dalymount the week before. They were so good in that first half and tactically got everything so right. Just on the night, it baffled me a little bit, some of the decisions. I think John Martin is up on his own. They're chasing the goal, and then they make a direct substitution, and Boydie comes on. He's still isolated on his own up top, and it just didn't look like they were going to. Again, Sligo didn't have to do overly too much defending. Obviously, the keeper Sargent makes a few good saves, but they're more defending areas. They just got out to the wings trying to cross balls in, and it was easy for Sligo to defend, and it just felt you need a little bit more guile to break a team like Sligo down.
Yeah, and the one positive for Shells, first clean sheet in 6 games, coincidentally the last one also coming against Sligo in the showgrounds in March. But Sam Sargent, in fairness to him, had a good game as well.
He's been excellent for them, and you look at them, they've only scored 11 goals, so he's doing his business at the end. He's keeping them in games, picking them up points. And I thought Joey's comments were a bit odd after it, just talking about how good the players were, and like, these are some of the best players in the league. Like, just that draws a little bit of attention on you then. Well, where's the performances? They're not there, so it just draws a little bit of attention on himself.
He's looking at it from a performance base, isn't he? I know I get that idea, because I'd be big into always performance based as well, but when your results have been that bad, I think sometimes you need to just get the wins first and foremost, and then the performances can come. For me, look at, they've got back to basics. They've kept a clean sheet. They're very lucky to have kept a clean sheet as well. With, I think, Mickelson's goal. I think it's a goal. Like,
John Russell wasn't happy with some of the
I know. You can see it. It's a crazy decision that the linesman makes, because he looks miles onside. So they're very, very fortunate to keep a clean sheet. But for me, they got to get the wins. They just have to get wins. Their performances are all, I think, anytime I watch Shells, I think their performances are good. Yeah. They dominate possession. They 19 shots in the game against Sligo, no goals. So I think their performances are always good. It's just both boxes now, especially from set plays. As I said, Mickelson's goal should have been a goal. That was another set play that they would have conceded from. And then up the other end, they have to start putting these chances away. There's no way that you can have 19 shots and not get any goals. It's a recipe for disaster.
And then Sligo Rovers, on the other hand, Richie, big Connacht derby coming on Saturday as well. So they're at home to Galway United, where both teams probably just need that little push.
Yeah, this could ignite it for either of them, couldn't they? And look, Sligo, they were, especially last year, they were getting losses and losses and losses. But I think now they've only one loss out of their last 7 games, and some really, really tricky fixtures, the likes of away to Shells and places like that, really hard place to go. So to only have one loss in their last 7 games, that'll build confidence in the dressing room. And I think you see with John Russell now, he's quite relaxed, he is, and I hear his comments that he really believes in the dressing room. He loves the lads that's in there, and you can see they're giving him absolutely everything on the pitch. So that's going to be a great game, it is, on Friday.
Yeah, and now just the first division before we finish up. And Athlone Town and Treaty United drew 0-0. Bray Wanderers beat Cove Ramblers 5-1. Very much recommend Ben McCormick's the third one for the hat-trick, the scoop. Yeah. As a goalkeeper, I suppose you're just like, what do you do?
And you're waving at it.
Yeah, pretty much. But it was definitely worth watching anyway, and a good hat-trick for him as well in that game. We'll talk about Cork City and UCD very shortly, but Finn Harps beat Kerry 1-0, and Wexford went down 2-1 at home to Longford Town. But Barry, I suppose finally on Cork City last week, we were talking about the fact they'd lost 2 Munster derbies back to back against Cove and Kerry, and then UCD had snuck up on them, gone top on goal difference. So reports of their demise are very much exaggerated at this point.
Yeah, I just think they have little sprinkling of quality in that team. The Greg Bulgers, Maguires, and again, Hans and Pongo again, a hat-trick on Friday night, and he was excellent in the game. That's just the difference at that level. I think he can intersperse the rest of the team with up and coming players in a bit, but once you have that bit of quality, it takes over, and it's a huge win. They just need to decide what they are now going into the Premier. Like we were talking about identity, Sligo have it, Galway have it. You can't just become that yo-yo club again. They have to nearly start planning as if they're going up and try and get those players in place for next season.
Yeah, because I suppose that is the story of Cork City's time in the last wee while, where they go up, don't really find a way of establishing themselves. I know they had a lot of injuries at the start of last season, which had an impact, but then, you know, it ends up being this pattern, and we're seeing what Dundalk have been able to do in terms of you go up, establish yourself. Waterford and Galway did it previously. Yeah,
well, Barry's dead right. You always go by their identity, and I think if you look back to Cork's most dominant times in the Premier Division when John Caulfield was the manager, they had a clear identity. They were a big physical team. They got the ball back the front, and they had some really good players supporting the forward line. Then I think Tim Clancy put all the eggs in one basket, didn't he, when he signed Seanie Maguire and Rory Keaton, thinking we'll just score our way out of this. And you can't do that. Even you look at Shamrock Rovers, their whole philosophy is built on their defensive record. They had Roberto Lopez missing on Friday. They did against Galway, but you have Lee Grace, Enda Stevens and Dan Cleary that step in. Talk about quality and experience there. If Cork do go back up, which I think they will because of the players they have, I think they need to sign really, really experienced defenders, build a stability on that, and then you have the flair players with the likes of Seanie Maguire and that can fire you up the league.
Yeah, and they are back top of the first division, so they're on 30 points with UCD. 3 behind. Cork do have a game in hand as well, and the rest of the playoff picture at the moment: Wexford on 22, Athlone on 22, Bray just behind on 20, and just outside the playoff places, Cove and Longford and Finn Harps on 19, 18 and 17 points respectively. So that's finished. That's us done for the moment anyway. I'll be joined by Rachel Graham very shortly. Barry and Richie, thanks for coming on.
Thanks, Raf.
All right, you're very welcome back to the RTÉ Soccer Podcast. I'm joined now by Rachel Graham, as always. Rachel, what's the crack? How are you?
Not too much. I'm good, Raf. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad at all. And let's just start on the All-Ireland Cup. I know there's some big games in the Women's Premier Division coming up this weekend. But in the Women's All-Ireland Cup on Saturday in Group A, Shamrock Rovers beat Sligo Rovers 3-1. Wexford and Linfield drew 1-1. In Group B, Peamount beat DLR Waves 5-0. And then Group C, Cork City and Treaty United in the 0-0 draw. And then Group D for yourselves, Shelbourne beat Bohemians 2-1. And then Sunday, Lisburn Rangers lost 4-1 at home to Galway United in Group B. And Group D, Glentoran Women beat Waterford. The other way around. Waterford beat Glentoran Women 1-0. And then the one that kind of jumped out to me, actually, and I know it's only the third competition for Athlone, who would have the cup and also the league as their primary objective. But Group C there, they lost 3-2 to Cliftonville Ladies. And it's not just the fact that there's a big gap between the Northern Irish teams and the teams from the Republic of Ireland. It was the fact that Athlone had a very strong squad out.
Yeah, and look, to be fair, I do think the gap is probably closing between ourselves and the Northern team. We do tend to get tough games against them, and they do tend to take that competition really seriously, so probably not as easy as maybe you think. But yeah, like you said, Athlone, I don't think they really made any changes. It's probably their strongest 11 that they had available, and that's what I spoke about sometimes, where teams use it as an opportunity to play players who haven't played. And I think for the likes of Athlone, who, like you said, are out to win a league, that's their number one. This is probably their third on their list of things that they want to win. And sometimes when you do play the starting 11 that you've played week in, week out in the league, it's maybe there's a bit of complacency there, and maybe this isn't as important as a league game or when we do get into the cup rounds. But if you make changes like we did ourselves, it's players who are out to kind of prove a point. And I want to get into the 11, I want to play more minutes, and they tend to take the games really seriously then, play with it with an intensity. And sometimes when you do just play the normal 11, maybe you lose that a little bit. So sometimes, although you might not get the same quality of players and quality of game, you do get probably a more intense game because players are just out to prove a point. But yeah, look, I think it's probably still a surprising result. I think the goals they're probably disappointed with, probably a bit soft in terms of Courtney's ability. I think she'd probably be disappointed coming away having conceded 3 goals. But yeah, look, sometimes as well you might just need a little wake up call to realise, look, we're not as good as just showing up and everything's going to be easy. So I think for them it's put it behind you now and still a chance to get out of the group and focus back on the league.
Yeah, and you were in action for Shelbourne against Bohemians, and I got wind during Saturday that a goal had gone in straight from a corner again for Shells. The second time in this competition that it's happened. The only difference was you were not on the scene for this.
No, and that's what people are probably thinking now. We're practicing these in training, or this is our game plan now. But look, in fairness to Avo, there wasn't a bit of wind for hers. She's some delivery, some whip of a ball, and it was one of them. As soon as you see it leave her foot, it was, that was in. And, I needed a gale force win behind mine to get it in. But Avian is just all pure class. And look, she has that. Her deliveries are excellent. Free kicks, corner. She's been excellent this year, and obviously been rewarded with a call up lately as well. So, look, she's really kind of, after having such a tough year, like she's really back to herself now, back to her best. And yeah, look, she was excellent on Saturday as well. Yeah,
you did play a very key role though in the opening goal that you did score on the day. So you nipped in, I think, was it on Hannah Healy?
Yeah, so I was giving instructions to Mark Hannah Healy, and somebody doesn't stop running constantly. It was such a hot day. I was like, in for a tough one today. But yeah, I think it was kicked long, and I think she kind of took a bit of a heavy touch and just pounced down on a loose ball and came down. Alex Cook took it down, and in fairness, played a great ball through to Becky Watkins, who playing out of position for us. She's had to adapt. She's playing up front now, but a great goal for her. She's been probably one of our best signings. She's been excellent. But yeah, no, look, I probably just done the easy part, and then I wouldn't really be taking much credit for that goal, to be honest.
Yeah, and it's no relief for Bows again at the moment as well. Obviously in the league, it's been kind of patchy in terms of form, as we've discussed over the last few weeks. And then obviously this is a competition they got to the final in last year, and it looks like unless there's a major turnaround in the last group games, this is where they're going to end up.
Yeah, and that's what we were probably surprised to see. We thought they were going to come out full strength, really go at it. And to be fair, if I was probably manager of that team and you're thinking they've never won anything, haven't won any silverware, you probably would be targeting this as something that you'd really want to go and win, especially being in the final last year and the disappointment going to penalties, losing on penalties. And they had made a few changes as well. And look, I'm not saying it was an easy game or anything like that, but they definitely probably had a stronger 11 that they could have started. And we were surprised. We were preparing for their starting 11 as normal, and yeah, probably a bit shocked that they didn't really go for it now. I think they need to beat Waterford by 5 goals, and for us to beat Glentoran as well. But we're out of the group now, where Sean could turn around to that Glentoran game and say, I'm going to play like a lot of under 23s, give them the experience of it. So we wouldn't be relying on us to go and win easily, if depending on what Sean feels on the day. So yeah, it was quite surprising to see that they had probably played a bit of a weaker 11 than they could have. Yeah,
and then in the Shamrock Rovers Sligo game, Sydney Stevens, who we talked about last week, in a rich vein of form, was on target again this time. The Shamrock Rovers goals, some really good ones scored. I think the Emily Corbett one, is that the pick of the bunch?
I think so. And look, fairness, Therese Kenevi scored a great goal as well. And I think when a defender scores a great goal, it's always a bit more special than when a centre forward scores a great goal. But yeah, look, I think Emily Corbett probably had the best goal of the night. It's a little touch inside, and then a nice finish into the top corner. And again, a player who really shone when she was at Athlone, was top goal scorer, I think player of the year, and for Athlone. But probably had a little bit of a dip then when she went to Wexford, and is starting to kind of show again her quality that she has, because she was excellent that year for Athlone. That's obviously the ability she has, that's in her. Probably just hasn't shown in the last couple of years, but I think this year she's popped up with a few goals, probably feeling back to our best.
Yeah, and then as I mentioned at the top, there's some big fixtures in the Women's Premier Division this coming Saturday, and we've talked a lot about Galway. This is going to be a huge month for them. Obviously, they've won every game in the league so far. They've added another win there in the All-Ireland Cup as well, and then they're coming to play yourselves at Tolka Park. But as big a couple of weeks as it is for them, it's also kind of huge for yourselves, just where the table is at the moment.
Yeah, look, the reality is we're 5 points off them. We're only 6 games in, we're 5 points off, and that's, really not ideal for us. And look, it's probably too early to be saying it's a must-win game, and, if you lose, you're out of the title race. But for us, we're definitely, if we lose that game, it's going to be a big mountain for us to climb. It's hard to come back from losing games or dropping points in this league, because we only play each other twice, which, is only 20 games or 22 games. So, not a lot of room for error. So look, for us, we know it's a huge game. It's, ideally we'd be coming out with there with 3 points. We'd be doing everything we can to win the game. And yeah, like you said, it's a real kind of test now for Galway to really prove that they're up there. They've had 6 opening wins, but it's probably 6 games that you would expect them to win. So they've us this weekend, they've Athlone next weekend. So it could be a big, week, 7 days for them, where you're top of the table, you're cruising, and then all of a sudden, you're level on points or you're behind the likes of an Athlone. So look, it'll be obviously a tough game. We always do have tough games against them. But look, we'll be doing everything we can, in our powers to try and win that game.
And given that the onus is on yourselves, are you kind of anticipating that Galway will look to hit on the break and kind of sit back a little bit to frustrate because of where they are in the table?
Look, potentially, if they're being clever, they might say, look, we can come out here with a draw, or we can frustrate them and catch them out. But look, we haven't done any, we'll train tonight. We haven't done any, we don't look past our next game. So we haven't.
And you can't give away tactics right here either.
Exactly. Yeah, Phil Trill might be listening. But no, look, we'd only start to look at these things tonight, and obviously Wednesday and Thursday. Then we'll train and really start to focus on what Galway are good at and how we can, hurt them. But look, they're a super fit team. They're young. Their young players are, progressing year on year. Emma Doherty's, scoring a lot of goals. So look, it's obviously going to be a tough game. We're going to have to be at our best, I think, to beat them. But look, if you want to win a league, you have to win all your home games first of all, and you have to be able to beat the other top teams as well. So look, we'll be doing our best.
Yeah, and then Wexford Peamount jumped out to me as well, and this is just where they're both at in the table. It feels like whoever wins that, maybe there's a bit of momentum there to try and push into that top 5 and actually just try and, I suppose, battle for those upper places.
Yeah, and these are probably the key fixtures for the likes of them in terms of getting as high up at the table as possible. Wexford have obviously had a bit of a tough start given where they've been in the last few years to where they are now. It's probably a hard one to take for them to see that they're sitting mid-table. They're not winning games week in, week out. But Peamount probably similar as well. Used to be in a top team and probably in a similar position. But yeah, look, I think for them that's the key games where they can difference of finishing 4th or 5th or 5th or 6th. That's the ones that you're in beside on the league table. You're saying probably quality, same depth in your squad. It's similar level. So I think, they're key games for the likes of them two teams. And
then the Shamrock Rovers Bows rivalry as well in the league, in the context of it, because in the men's game, obviously, it's the big fixture in the Premier Division. But for yourselves, because I suppose ye have been one of the strongest teams in the division. Peamount, as you said, have been traditionally quite big. Shamrock Rovers are obviously strong as well. And then Bows have sort of been relatively new as well, similar to Rovers returning to the league as well. Where does that particular Rovers-Bows derby fit into, I suppose, the Dublin derby picture in the women's Premier Division?
Yeah, look, I do probably think personally the biggest rivalry, I think, or the biggest, intense games is probably ourselves and Bows. I think there's a lot of, probably history there where a lot of them have played for Shells before. We've had such good games, tough losses against them, good wins. So I think we have probably the game that feels more like a Dublin derby if you're comparing it to like the men's side of the game. But look, for Rovers as well, it's it's still two big clubs going at each other, and like we were saying, Bows have had a poor enough start. Like that's 6 losses in a row now, and in the 2 competitions for them. So look, a really tough time for them, for a team that finished quite strongly last year, like cup final we've seen, and look, they lost the cup final, but absolutely put it up to Athlone, who were the most dominant team last year, and almost lost only narrowly by a goal. So for them, they finished so strongly last year. It is strange to see them struggling so much this year, and look, whether that's the new managers coming in, is it taking time to settle? It's hard to know, and 1 or 2 players might have left as well. So look, it is hard, but yeah, look, we've obviously had really tough games against them, but you see them struggling in their other games. It's hard to know who's going to come out on top, but Rovers definitely probably have the better start of the season so far.
And then Cork City as well, again, as we talked about, they're bottom of the table, but they have a couple of fixtures coming up, DLR Waves, Sligo Rovers, probably underdogs in both, but the best opportunity to try and get something on the board. Yeah,
and that's what we were speaking about Cork before. They've had such a tough opening game. They've played pretty much the top half of the table. So it looks on paper like they're really, really struggling, but I think they're coming into the games now where they're probably playing teams that are at a similar level to them, and they've DLR this weekend. I'm sure that's a game that they're going to really target. Like when they played us, they sat in, they tried to make it difficult for us. They might have a different game plan going into this one where they feel they can attack more, because they're not the worst of teams. They've some really good young players, so it's not a case where they're going to have to do that against every team every week. So look, it's hopefully a good few weeks for them where they can really go and start playing football, score a few goals, hopefully get a few points, maybe pick up, a win or 2 or a draw or even. But yeah, look, I'm not saying DLR are going to be easy, or like the likes of Sligo is going to be easy, but it probably is the teams that they are probably in around their level.
Yeah, and last week I was at Aviva Stadium, so John Martin, the FAI Director of Football, he was talking about being keen to ensure young players are well equipped for going over to play in WSL2, so the second tier in England, to avoid the previous issues from the past where players go over but were ill prepared for the challenges that lay ahead. And from your point of view, is the gap for players going from here over to England, particularly in, let's say, the second tier level, the gap isn't purely, it's not a technical issue though, is it really?
No, I don't think so at all. I don't think it's in any way a talent issue. But look, there is probably a step up in terms of like the physicality, the fitness side of it. And look, for us, you know, we have to try and help these players as best we can when they go over. And I do think if we do get an introduction of an under 21s or an under 23s team, whichever one it is, you know, players do tend to go over at the age of 20, 21. So if they're going off the back of having this international experience where they're really tested, I think that will stand to them as well. But even as a club, you know, it's like that saying, like, you have to prepare the person as much as you prepare the player. And sometimes it's about managing your expectations going over. And look, it is probably hard, you know, if you're a young girl and you've dreamed all your life of being a professional footballer, you get your contract, you go over, and you probably just assume it's going to be easy. Like, this is what I've worked for, I have it now. But it doesn't tend to be the case. We've seen, you know, Kelly Brady's probably the latest one to go over, and you know, she lit up Air League. She was scoring goals pretty much every week, and I think she's had 2 appearances since she's gone over, and I don't think even total 10 minutes. So look, she's obviously kind of struggling with a bit of the step up as well. So I think managing your expectations as well, I think, is probably a good way to go about it. And it's not going to be easy. It might take a year, it might take 2 years to really get yourself up to it. And look, I do think with the investment, like we're saying with the academies, you know, all the government investing is going to really be a help for any young player coming through now, where they have, you know, dedicated staff, full-time staff to improving players, but also probably educating players, and even the likes of nutrition, you know, what to eat before and after games. It's huge. Your sleep, how to recover, your strength and conditioning. Like we said, it's not a talent issue, it's not a technical issue. It's sometimes it's the physical side of the game, and they're probably a bit ahead of us, where their players are getting educated younger and are living better lifestyles younger. They're in the gyms, and we go over and you're playing catch up then. So I think that will really help with the investment of it. And like you probably, like I've seen over the years with our underage international teams, where we go over and we're in a group of 4, and like France or England are in the group, and we'll always perform really well in the first game, put it up to any team. We're always up there. And then second game, and then by the time you get to the third game, it's like the players are just running on empty. They just don't have anything left in the tank, as you say. And you look at the France, England, and they're as the same as they were in the first game, the second game, the third game. They recover well. They're just conditioned way better than we are, and it's just probably we've been a bit behind in that in the last few years. So look, that's something anybody can do. Any player can go to the gym, or anyone can eat right or sleep right. So it is something it is frustrating to see that we're probably falling behind on that side of it.
Yeah, and also I suppose England, the level there has actually jumped up as well, because I just thinking back to maybe your own time or earlier in your own career, when the likes of Diane Caldwell, Marie Curtin, Louise Quinn are coming through. A lot of them did go over to other countries, let's say Scandinavia, for example, in some cases. Yeah,
and look, it's probably just becoming, you know, more popular as well in women's sport, girls playing football. It's just going to become harder and harder. The pool gets bigger and bigger. So, look, which is obviously brilliant. You know, we want the game to grow as best we can. But, you know, for everyone, say, the likes of Kelly Brady here, there's probably 10 in England that are probably fighting out for the same spot. So, you know, sometimes it is a case of they're a big fish here and they go over and they're probably just, you know, a small fish in a big pond over there. So it is hard. You know, like I was saying, imagine that expectation. It's not that we're not good enough. It's just about having to get yourself in the best possible condition going over, doing everything right on and off the pitch from as young as you can, you know, give yourself the best chance. But yeah, look, it's going to get tougher and tougher to go and be a professional footballer.
And then in WSL 2 as well, just in terms of the Irish contingent that are there, so Lucy Quinn, there's a bit of news around her in terms of her place at Birmingham City.
Yeah, look, I just see it online. I think our contract is up this summer as well, and I just see it a bit online about rumours of her leaving Birmingham. I haven't seen anything confirmed yet, but sometimes, you know, there's no smoke without fire as well, and probably is someone that you might think might struggle to stay on. And that's the harsh reality of it, is, you know, you're celebrating going up, getting promoted with your club, and the reality is, are you going to be there next year? I'm sure that's a worry in the back of her mind. Look, I think she'll get another club. It might be a WSL 2 club. Might be the best move for her, you know, to get minutes. There's no point in going up and sitting on a bench, and especially for us as an international team, we want our players playing. But yeah, look, that's the harsh reality of football. It's, you can celebrate 1 minute and then you're down in the dumps the next. So look, I don't know what I'm confirmed on her yet, but you'd imagine she might be a bit at risk of not getting a new contract there.
And then Crystal Palace as well, where there's a larger contingent of Irish players. You mentioned Kelly Brady already, who's I think contracted until next summer, but the likes of Abby Larkin, Hayley Nolan, Rusha Littlejohn would be impacted as well.
Yeah, and I think Abby Larkin's probably the one that's, I would say, is probably the safest. I think she's really kind of started to shine the last little while, and we spoke about her last year in WSL 1. She probably just wasn't ready. Probably needed that year at WSL 2 where she could find her feet and get a few goals, build her confidence. I think that's really helped her, and I think she'll be fine. Hayley Nolan's played a good bit as well, but then you're looking at the likes of Rusha Littlejohn, who's 35 now. She has such a long list of injuries. Is probably not available for a team every week. I don't know if it's something they're going to take a risk on. Even is another WSL 2 going to take a risk on her? I think she is probably in a stage now where she's probably a bit concerned. And obviously for us at Ireland, if you're not playing for a club, I can't really see her being selected or coming into camps. And then Kelly Brady, has probably struggled to get a lot of minutes, game time. She might choose to leave herself and hopefully get another WSL 2 team, because I don't know, if you're not able for WSL 2, I don't think you're magically going to be ready for WSL 1 after a few months. So look, time will tell, but I can't really see them all being at Crystal Palace next year. Yeah,
and a final point, something we spoke about last week in regard to Katie McCabe and Arsenal. So it was looking a little bleak in terms of whether she'd remain at the club, and it's still, nothing is confirmed one way or another, but it seems there might be a little change of mind from the Arsenal point of view.
Yeah, that's why maybe they listen to this podcast and listen to what we're saying, but you see stuff online, and sometimes again, no smoke without fire, but they seem to kind of maybe making a bit of a U-turn on it, and potentially trying to keep her now. And they've announced a few departures already, a few new signing or a few new contracts. So you'd imagine it's they haven't made a decision either way, because you probably would have known by now. So look, I think it'd be brilliant for her. I think I know Katie well, and she loves playing for Arsenal. She loves being there. So I think for her, that's her number one choice. Obviously, you need the right contract. You need to know your worth, get what you deserve, which Katie will definitely do. So look, hopefully in the next couple of weeks she'll be sorted. But look, she'll get a club either way, but I do think in her heart she'd love to stay at Arsenal.
Yeah, the stability, and 11 years already there as well. But I think that brings us to a close. We'll be back next Monday. Rachel, thanks very much for coming in. We'll be back next week.